SFJ 4x4 Studios presents
in my oversized four-wheel drive Jeep.
a Jeep podcast starring industry experts.
Pure monosity.
What? Say that again.
With mad scientist Scott Brown,
Use my drill press as a sort of lathe.
our host Neil Simpson,
If one light goes out, they all go out.
filled with shenanigans.
We are really professional with Jeeps.
This is I Speak Jeep.
Good morning, afternoon, evening, however you are joining us. This is the I Speak Jeep podcast presented by SFJ4x4.com. My name is Neil with Simpson Family Jeeps, joined with my colleagues, decorated adventurers, builders, craftsmen.
If you can't tell already, Jeff's back.
Jeffrey is back.
I'm back.
We did not start hot mic'd or muted.
Yeah.
You know what though? I've done that to you guys a couple times, so it's okay. You did all right.
Yeah.
My favorite part of it though.
You didn't even introduce yourself. You just wanted to get into the burn session.
Oh, I do want to get into the burn
session.
So I'm Jeff. I'm the producer, and I was on
Neil.
I was on vacation last week.
Wants to light me on fire.
No, my favorite part of it though was that you're like hitting the mute key, and you're Davey. It's not any mute working. I'm like, he has no idea he's muting himself
I
and
had
unmuting.
no idea that I was muting and unmuting.
I suspected that was what was happening.
Not the foggiest. Let me just take a moment. If anybody, whether it's on the actual listening side of things, can recognize, but how much I appreciate our viewers who jumped on right away and was like, hey, before you say something
Caution.
tremendously inappropriate, which wouldn't have happened
before it becomes an R-rated show.
before it becomes an R-rated show. No, and unfortunately, if you did miss my little faux pas last week, it was just me questioning Davey. I wanted to put the Savage on screen with us. The world deserves to know the Savage.
I
right?
agree.
And I said, Savage, what? Let's put you on set, with us. And he goes, okay, yeah, I'm here for it, right? He's a trooper, so he says he's going to do it. I said, okay, well, what are we going to talk about on an automotive podcast with you? Because that's not exactly his strength,
Right.
you know?
Changed a water pump once.
He changed the water pump. He's a hustler, right? He's a hustler. He can do leadership podcast, but thank
He
you,
brings
sir.
a-
As he's bringing,
As he's bringing
he was
coffee.
on camera for half a second
For
there.
half a second, that was critical. That was
great.
critical. And if you're listening in, we apologize that sometimes there are things that you can't see. And what that was the Savage graced us in his presence.
I would
and
think we saw a
being,
hand.
being a good
hand.
intern, bringing coffee.
bringing coffee back to the podcast. I needed to recharge up. My batteries might be slowing already. So.
Oh boy.
But thank you to our viewers who mentioned that we were hot mic'd, and I very much in our waiting period I was getting ready to pontificate inappropriately.
I'm going to get us caught up on comments quick.
Oh,
so
okay.
Darla's saying good morning.
Morning, Darla.
Dale's saying morning.
Morning, Dale.
My wife chimed in. To be fair, in a roast, I had to remind him we were in a different time zone when he wanted to tune in. that did happen.
That's true.
Uh,
I was waiting for you to chime in and text in
so
or something
I
like
tried to, but it kept. I was posting as if I was SFJ.
Family
It wouldn't let me switch it to myself,
Oh.
so I'm like, I'll just let it go.
that. Okay.
But and then Dale the Savage is cool,
He is cool.
and Chuck, A Star Is Born.
No doubt. No doubt. Sir, you haven't introduced yourself.
I am
And-
mad scientist Scott Brown.
Joe asks, has anyone seen my pants?
No comment.
Oh, Joe, we're sitting at a desk waist up, so I'll let
Everyone
you just.
has pants.
Do
do
though?
they?
Do we? Do they?
I
don't
believe
know.
you and I do. It's another question about Neil.
It's questionable. Folks, if you're listening in your ear holes, if we're on your commuter in the air and you're flying in a plane or you're working in the yard, we appreciate you so very, very much. You too can join in the conversation. You can jump in the comments every Monday live at 10:19 a.m. on Facebook. We do try to honor the fact that this is a podcast, and factually, you have made us very successful by downloading these podcasts and listening at alternative times to the live, but we do invite you to come and be part of the live. We always get a kick out of people who, take the day off or schedule a meeting or schedule a conference call so they can jump in for the first time. So if that is you, jump on the comments, tell us hello, and we appreciate all of the offices that turn on the live. Big shout out to Lake Erie Automotive, one of our subcontracted friends, working on our limousine today. Actually,
I bet they're so
Excited.
thrilled.
but they're thrilled about that, right? And
If it accidentally sets on fire, it's okay.
yes, that's oh my
Fully
goodness.
insured.
But I know that they try to, turn on our podcast in the shop and or waiting room and listen in. So we thank all of the businesses and people and individuals who do join us. But like I said as well, obviously the folks who are doing the downloads and sharing specifically.
I got to interrupt for a second because Lake Erie is tuned in right now, and they said, "I'm driving it over the cliff." There goes your limo.
Oh, that was
Insurance.
that was short-lived. That was short-lived. The limousine. Folks, I want you to know that you're going to start to see a little more of this limo, and I'm just going to
Well,
tease
maybe
that.
if it's not
Maybe.
in the ravine.
Well, that's if it's not over the cliff at this point.
We're going to make it off-road capable. It'll be fine.
Oh, gracious.
Uh.
What are we? I don't know if it's got that in its blood, in its soul. It's a Cadillac. It's not supposed to be off-road. It's not even
It's
supposed to be
supposed to be a
lifted.
smooth ride.
It's supposed
What
to
are
be
you
a
talking
smooth,
about?
nice float on air ride, no doubt. So folks, what it's important that Jeffrey is here. He was not here, and I want to acknowledge,
he was in the land of corn.
for the record, both on the podcast, as far as streaming, but also the live, and then obviously it will go up on YouTube, how excited and proud we are of you, Jeffrey, for the fact that you took that piece of crap 800-foot long camper
That was 10,000 pounds.
that was 10 gajillion pounds,
yeah.
and you saw potential in it, and despite our goading, even though you went over budget, that you
They had to
so.
get that punch in there.
that you saw that plan and vision all the way through, and then he successfully, folks, hooked up to that trailer, drove it to the land of corn,
Yep.
Yes.
had a fantastic weekend with his family, priorities in the right place, and then towed it home uneventfully.
Correct.
Appropriately so. So you know what? Congratulations to you from us here, from all of our viewers, our listeners. How cool is that?
Thanks.
I'm tickled with the fact that that we kind of got to live vicariously through you through that process, and that it was so successful. So congratulations.
The fact that it made it there and back in one piece, I was happy. I mean, there's some things came up while we were there that I was like, oh, we should address that eventually. But as far as the trip
Always.
goes, it was
Always.
a success.
That's it. And oh my gosh, listeners, if you did not know this, once my wife and I'm not going to put her in my mouth. Go ahead.
I'm gonna catch up on comments because this is great. So Ken canceled a meeting for this.
We appreciate that, Ken, as you should.
Dale's asking when we'll see the limo at SOAR. Brad's saying happy Monday, fellas.
Morning, Brad.
Amy's saying good morning, guys.
Morning, honey.
And Dave Ammerman is saying we schedule a fake meeting in our office so we are not interrupted during the podcast. I love it.
And we salute you, folks, for that.
That's great.
So, the story I was about to share was the fact that, and obviously I shouldn't put my wife in my mouth, despite the fact she doesn't watch the podcast, so she wouldn't know any different. But I bought a 1977 Coachman truck camper without her knowledge or permission, or actually even a way to haul it at that time. Years ago, not recently, years ago. And then I spent several weeks working on it to clean it up to make it, really usable and not so much 70s inspired. And it became a really, really
You didn't want the
rewarding-
shag rug in it?
We literally took the shag and the orange, glassy
Yep.
plexiglass stuff out of there,
Yep.
and I painted the green stove. I was so horrible as far as interior stuff was concerned. But we did all this. We made it beautiful. We actually had a local upholsterer do new seat cushions, and my wife picked out the trim and accoutrements for the curtains and whatnot. It was so super cool. I, however, neglected the fact that I actually needed to load it roughly 39 inches high to fit in the bed of my dually pickup truck. Because, of course, when that camper was built, it was much more your truck, Scott.
Yeah.
It was much lower to the ground. You had the camper special, right?
Basically.
I'm trying to haul this truck on a modern-day dually
4x4.
4x4,
Yeah.
which this camper never was meant to go onto. So it's a very high, heavy, uncomfortable center of
And the
gravity.
truck has hips.
And the truck has beautiful, round, voluptuous hips.
Who's getting intimate with vehicles now?
I wondered how long that was going to take. Anywho, I put it on the truck eventually, and I am 15 minutes into the drive. Not even. I'm not even 15 minutes in the drive. And one of the straps came untethered after investing so much blood, sweat, tears, and finances into this
Took a can
camper.
opener to it.
And took a can opener. The strap unraveled, went around the dually of the truck, and it just can openered the bottom side of this otherwise pristine camper on the highway. And you know what I did? I got out of the truck, I backed up, I got the strap out of it, I band-aided it up, and my wife and I sailed on to the Carolinas and had a spectacular week randomly camping across the Carolinas.
That's awesome.
But you didn't have that.
No.
So congratulations to
I
not
did-
having the gobbledygook cob up that I did.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the major thing that I had to do, because it did rain a lot while we were out there, is the used door that I put in.
Oh God. The one use thing that he assured us was going to be fine.
It did let water in.
Okay.
So I went and got some weather seal and resealed it, and that was fine the rest of the
Did you
weekend.
flex seal it or did you?
No, I just I got the foam weather seal strip.
Oh, okay.
It was leaking
Through the
between
through
the
the
frame and the door. It
Oh.
wasn't actually leaking at where I attached it. That part was good.
Oh.
it was between the part that I didn't worry
That
about.
was the part you didn't worry about. The only part that you did not address.
And spoiler alert: RV doors always leak.
yeah.
Oh, my
Oh,
God.
it was just
If you didn't
pouring
know
in
from my
through.
camper already.
I should have known from your camper. I should have known better. But, there was a store somewhere in this little tiny town with one traffic light that may or may not have worked.
Sure.
Yeah.
All 4 stores in the entire town were located right on the city corner there.
Well,
So,
other places are for corn.
yeah.
Yeah, he says. Folks, I really need you to understand the gravity of the fact that Jeffrey saddled his lovely wife, his 3 children,
And 3 dogs.
and 3 dogs.
Not
in
small dogs
his-
either.
No, not small dogs. So his small mobile farm into his 1-ton Jeep Gladiator
Yes.
and towed this 72-foot homemade camper to Iowa. The gravity of that should not be lost on
And
you.
what kind of mileage did you get, Jeff?
8.2 was my total mileage for the round trip.
So we got big block, square body Chevy territory
Hey.
mileage.
So when I did my gas mileage budget ahead of time, I estimated 7 miles a gallon, and I estimated at $3.50 per gallon. So
You made money.
I made money as
He
far
made
as I'm
money on
concerned.
his trip, is what he's saying.
As far as I'm concerned.
Not what I heard.
Nice. All right, Scott. What do you got going on, man? How's the
Well,
car?
Uh,
How's the shop?
well, first off, we have to, we did a bad job last week because we were distracted with not Jeff.
Totally.
But you got to do a shout out to all the mothers out there. We did have Mother's Day yesterday.
Yes, we did.
And,
Thank you so much to all of them
everyone.
and their support.
So I had a lot of that kind of stuff going on. I do finally, it's been like 7 weeks, I swear, but the inner tail pan is permanently affixed to the car.
Nice. Congratulations.
And I found more rust.
Of course you did. Of course you
And the
did.
car taketh and giveth.
the car taketh and giveth.
So I'm currently ignoring the car for the moment. I've
That's
been
right. Put it
working
in timeout.
on- working on some improvements and been running out of stuff left and right. So I need to make a list and figure out where that all is and yeah.
Sounds like he's pretty motivated
yes,
at the moment.
yes.
But
Needs a reset.
So just on the comments real quick, my wife did chime in. She said, I already asked if we could take it apart and rebuild smaller. I said, no more projects. And then Chuck said, you could fit all the Patreons and some beer in that trailer. Yes, we could.
It's
yes. My wife wants to know if it has 10-foot ceilings.
8. 8-foot ceilings.
8-foot ceilings.
I may have accidentally built it like a house.
You did.
Very tall.
You did. And the fact that it tracked well down the highway is, to your credit.
I was very pleased with that. And Scott gets some of that credit too, because he helped with the positioning of the axles.
Yes, absolutely.
And that really made the difference.
It does. That weight distribution, especially with high center of gravity, makes a big difference. So, and on your Mother's Day shout out there, we did offer up a post where we were asking people to tell us about their Mother's Day stories, and we got a couple, fun little quips there. I really encourage people to. I know Mother's Day's passed, but still get on there and tell us stories about your mom or your Jeep experience with them. I really enjoyed Joe Brilla's. I know his mother was very, very important to him and Linda. And they have obviously they have a couple beautiful Wranglers. And his comment or her comment to them was, "Couldn't you afford doors for this thing?" when they had one of their JKUs or JLUs.
Yeah, if you haven't stuffed your mother in a topless, doorless Jeep, what are you doing?
Oh my gosh, my mom's a trooper. She doesn't really particularly care for that, but she will oftentimes get in and placate my father.
I think from that the comment section on our post, my favorite thing that was trending was a hashtag Jeep Mom.
Oh, how fun.
Yeah.
How fun. And so a credit to my mom, and on that post and a little bit of the American hustle and kind of digging down and doing whatever it takes, I actually, working with the Savage and doing the social media posts, we actually shared a little brief story about my mother. But it is factual that we were working on an interior install a decade plus ago.
Yep.
And
that was not going well.
It was not going well.
No.
It was headed south fast.
Yeah.
And my
It was
mom
very late.
I literally came over in the middle of the night into the shop and was right there working side by side of us, sewing interior parts of seams of seats and whatnot.
If she doesn't deserve Mom of the Year for that.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Right. So fun piece to remember there. And of course, a shout out to my wife, who also endures the Jeep life. And she just likes the bougie part of it, the big Jeeps and the fun vehicles.
I was excited on Saturday while I was working and doing everything else. My wife did drive her Jeep across the county, and they went to waterfalls and to goat farms.
Oh, that's
nice.
And lived the Jeep life. And it was like, finally, she drives it.
She drives.
And as much as my wife is very supportive of the Jeep life, she loves the top off, doors off thing and everything. But the one thing she did not like on our trip was that I never reconnected the front sway bar.
So you had a little pitch and yaw going on there.
Just getting through Ohio. Once we got out of Ohio, it was gone.
Flat after that.
Well, exactly. But going through Ohio, you might as well have been on a cruise ship.
Really?
And she was not liking that.
Oh yeah.
After Cleveland, it's flat.
Yes.
It was actually
it's Sandusky.
It was going through.
Depends on how far north you go.
We took 271 down, so it was the lower stretch that actually
run.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
okay, I can dig that.
It wasn't terrible, but it was enough that a no sleep and trying to prepare last minute for it. She was not feeling it.
No doubt.
As
Big
she
push.
should.
She told me to stop and reconnect the sway bar links. I'm like, they've been off for like a year at this point. I don't know that they're going back on. We're just gonna keep going.
Right. I did a half crap job of detailing out the wife's Jeep. That was what she wanted for her Mother's Day. So, that and 10 tons of topsoil.
Oh boy.
Yes.
Which a lot of topsoil.
Which is phenomenally affordable. I'll be honest with you. I did not know that.
That reminds me.
Did you have a triaxle bring it in?
Yes.
Yeah.
I feel what Jen feels with the wildlife that she suffers with.
Oh.
My son found a tree that he deemed unworthy of the spot it was in, and trees are expensive.
Okay.
So I wanted to plant this tree and have it grow in the backyard.
Okay.
And I planted the tree and I spoke nice to the tree.
Yes.
And then a deer promptly stole it.
Stole your tree.
I went to water the tree yesterday. There's no more tree.
Oh no! It's been eaten down.
It's gone.
Oh, it's just gone.
It's straight gone.
Wow.
Yeah.
Who knew that was a thing?
I didn't know that was a thing.
I
was very sad.
A shout out to our project. Some of the as we touch base and we talk about, you know, how we're breaking ground on this acreage and doing the tiny house storage container-ish inspired build, we're doing this garden. Jason, as a trooper who was helping me, we worked a good bit on the garden this weekend. And unfortunately, while we were working on the garden, which is largely enclosed, the deer literally wandered up maybe 10 yards. And I thought,
I see you.
The audacity of you to wander up to be like, hey, you build me a buffet? Because I'll eat your garden, you know? I'm here for it. I was like, I have friends. They'll eat you. Like, I don't know. Like, come on now.
Yeah.
Like, I could get the dog out there or something. I don't know.
They're
He's
like,
so-
it's not our season. You can't touch us.
That's what
We're
that's
gonna come get
the
your food.
smug nature of these deer.
Yeah.
We're like, hey, I'm going to eat at that buffet until it's time to run, you know? I couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe it.
That's funny. What kind of topsoil did you get?
I don't know. Whatever
It
the
was-
start
Was it
company-
it sifted or was it
It's
just?
supposed to be. It is. I haven't gotten it yet.
Oh,
It's,
okay.
I'm awaiting delivery this week, and it is supposed to be. The word is not sifted that I was using over the weekend. Screened.
Screened. Yep.
It's supposed to be screened.
Yep.
And I opted for not. So on my initial purchase, I opted for not fertilized. Though I might backtrack and get. They said they can do a partial mix, a partial fertilized screen topsoil.
That's
but-
what the deer are trying to do for you.
I gotta be honest. I mean, they were super cool about it. I did not know how much dirt costs, and so I was kind of a layman's calling
I
in.
keep telling you, we need to sell our dirt.
The thing
It's
is,
not that expensive.
it's not that expensive.
Oh, dirt's cheap.
Dirt is cheap.
I did
That's
not
where
know.
the saying "dirt cheap" came from.
It is actually really cheap, and so I had actually
Wasn't
asked
ready.
them to bring me a like a loaded up 1-ton dump truck or 4,500 dump truck, and they said, yeah, we can totally do that. They were really cool about it, and they said, hey, it's going to be, I'll just put the numbers out there. It's going to be $270 delivered, and you're basically 3.5 tons in the bed of this truck, or we can bring you 10 tons
In a triaxle.
in a triaxle for $330.
Yep.
And I was like,
Shut up and take my money.
shut up and take my money.
Yep.
This is gonna fill in these raised beds
Yeah.
and get us going in that direction. And my wife, as a voracious gardener, can feel a level of satisfaction in life that we do with our vehicles and our projects. You know,
The first time I bought mulch, it was the same thing. They're like, well, we have a fee if we're going to bring it in the small truck, but if you just buy a triaxle load, we'll deliver it for free, and it's only this much. I'm like, that's $50 more than the delivery and setup for the small truck. Yeah, just bring me the triaxle. I'll figure out what to do with it.
isn't that the most crazy thing? I didn't know. We learn something new every day. It goes back to the American Hustle podcast we were talking about.
Yep.
So in comments here, Joe Brilla said the story behind that photo that you mentioned, she had lost a filling and we needed to get her up to the dentist in Burton. It was either my doorless JKU, the John Deere, or the neighbor's Amish buggy.
You made the right choice.
Roy Hill said, good morning, fellas.
Morning, Roy.
And Darla said the rabbits will come really bad. So they'll be coming for your garden.
Oh.
No, none of the wildlife is allowed to come for the garden.
So
It's not.
since he brought up John Deere, I want to give a quick shout out to your guys' talk last week with talking about John Deere's and maintenance of the tractors.
What's that?
I for the first time did maintenance on my tractor this weekend as
look
well.
at you,
For the
fancy
first
pants.
time.
For the first time ever. And
Sad.
He was trying
It
to get
was-
the blades off.
the blades were not working. They just weren't cutting anymore, and you could hear this noise and a little vibration. And I'm like, something's going
my
on.
skin is crawling. My skin is crawling.
I was like, I wonder how easy it is to take the deck off. It can't be that hard. Couple pins, deck's off. I'm like, wow, that was stupid easy. Why haven't I done this yet?
Right? I do it religiously throughout the
How
year.
long have you
I-
had your tractor?
3 years.
Oh,
And not only have I used the tractor at my property, but when my parents were building their house, I went out and towed it out to their
And
house
brush hogged.
and brush hogged their property for them with it. Hitting all the rocks, all the whatever was out
Picks
there.
up sticks.
Picks up it did great. So when I flipped it over and I'm looking at the blades,
And what little
Two-
blade was left?
yeah.
two
What
of
used
the
to be blades.
2 of the 3 blades were split down the middle on both ends.
What? They can do that?
Yeah, they can.
There was curves cut out of the blades where it's just worn away.
No.
Like You could put the cup into the curve.
I legitimately, I think
I should have brought it in for you.
I balanced. I look over at my bench over here. I balanced. And
I didn't even know you could balance blades until I was doing
I
this.
sharpened, balanced. I rebuilt my deck. I rebuild my deck once a year at
It
least.
is a Sears.
And I'm telling you, folks, I have this little Craftsman tractor. I'm running Jeep oil filters on it. I'm using
Yes.
oversized fuel filters on
a
it.
light bar.
It has a light bar.
Does it have lockers?
I'd be so tickled if it did. It's a hydrostatic transmission. I can't figure out how to
He
lock that rear.
serviced his transmission, Joe.
I have
Do
serviced
you even
it.
know how to do that on your tractor?
Nope.
I serviced my
so
hydrostatic
anyways-
transmission, no doubt.
So Chuck said Jeff thought he was buying the rock pulverizer option.
That's the deer. It's what they do.
I bought the multi-option blades this time. That's what they do, right?
Yeah.
And then Joe said, and you wonder why your blades are sharp as a basketball.
It's fine, so it doesn't cut anymore.
Oh,
And-
golly.
Dave Jones says, great show, guys. I love the stories.
Morning, Dave. You guys in your tractor. This is why
That's why
my
you buy a deer is you don't have to work on
apparently I bought the Craftsman and
Yeah, because we have the same tractor, basically.
oh,
Yeah,
God,
pretty
just
much.
beating it into submission.
it. Meh.
Beating it into submission.
I mean, it was still cutting grass. It was just leaving strips. So I'd have to go back two
I
or three
did
times.
2 years like that, Jeff.
How does that not irritate you? The first time it
Well, I
leaves a
was.
strip,
It
I'm
was
like, that's
bad.
it.
It was irritating me, and I'm like, oh, I'll just go back and do it again, and
That's
then I
what
go
I
back
was
and do it
doing.
again.
Then I put blades on it. I was like, wow,
Would-
this is
would-
revolutionary. I can mow
you know
grass
you've
again.
been you know you've been running it that way for too long when you know where it's going to leave the strip and
Yes.
where you have to hit it again so that it cuts
100%.
it.
all right. I get that because I do have to like back over some because we have that high fine grass this time of year, and
Yeah.
so it irritates the heck out of me that it lays down instead of cuts.
Daddy Jeep says my Simplicity does have a selectable locker.
Oh.
Of course it does.
All right, Rob, I see you. I see you. Gracious. We should actually talk about Jeeps because I think that realistically, that is kind of what we're known for. We do Jeeps really well despite doing John Deere's very poorly.
They run great. What do you have to do for it? I did the oil change too.
Did you?
Yeah.
Is that the
Congratulations.
first time?
It was.
Are you kidding me? I literally change my oil twice a year in my
Twice a
lawnmower.
year?
Twice a year. I
What?
change it at the beginning
What?
of the season, and then I change it.
Can we
Well,
get
because
your
I
old
was
stuff?
I was plowing. Can you get my old stuff?
Pull out
Get
the
my
stick
old
if it's still brown and full. It's fine.
I channeled Jim Shaneman in my brain because I was like, as I'm changing the oil again, I was like, well, I just did this and I didn't plow with it this year, but well, that's okay. Well, because I would use mine to plow. These last couple of years, I plowed my driveway with it. And so I would change my oil going into winter.
Mm-hmm.
I would use a finer viscous oil.
Okay, I'll give you that. I don't use mine as a plow tractor. It just sits in the snow outside because I forget to put it
At
away.
least I shoved mine in the building.
I've got a whole storage shed that I bought specifically to be able to store it in there.
Uh-huh.
And the last 2 years, I've totally just left it in the backyard. I'm like, oh, I should probably put that away before it snows.
Is it
And
where
then
you
then
stopped
it
mowing
snows.
with it the last
Yes.
I think what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to bring all of our lawnmowers in, and we're going to need like a YouTube video on I think the people, like they need to, like if they want to see this, we're going to bring our mowers in and we'll do like a shootout and like an inspection of our mowers. God.
Ready to roll.
Ready to roll. We're going to do like a grass off out there
We-
and cut a strip at a time.
We need to
See
do
whose
it like
strip is better.
we need to do it like in the next week or two because mine's actually freshly done and it won't be done again for years.
I think I got 7 years out of my blade, so meh.
No, no, you didn't, because you didn't actually get 7 years. Ah.
I got stuff to do with Jeeps to build. I don't have time
Right?
to service the
Oh
lawnmower.
my goodness!
I got campers to build apparently.
Apparently. All right. So today's topic, folks, is will my 35s fit?
Not on my John Deere, they will.
I'll make it work.
So the question is, this is actually spurred recently in conversation because I have had a couple conversations just recently in customers who were kind of not aware of the difference between XJs, TJs, JKs, and JLs.
Yes.
And the idea that 35s are the universal tire at this point.
Yes.
And of course, I will go back to talk about a little bit of my obscurity or toot my own horn that in the 90s, when 31s and 33s
Or what you did.
were what you did,
You had 35.
I had 35s,
As you
right? As I as a human being should, because of my own insecurities or anatomical questionabilities.
And that's only because 40s didn't exist.
That's only because, well, 44
They
did, but you had a groundhog or you had a
Yeah.
bias ply,
They were terrible.
and they were terrible,
Yeah.
right? And so I was rocking 35s in the 90s when 35s were not a thing. 31s and 33s were where it was at. But at this point in time, 35s is the standard.
yes.
And in fact, I would argue that the majority of our customers coming through are asking for 37s at this point.
Yes.
And that might just be a little bit of our customer demographic.
Yep.
But 35s are at their core, a standard. But the issue is that to put 35s on a TJ
Yes.
is very different than putting it on an XJ,
Yes.
which is exceptionally different than putting it on a JL or a JK.
Yes.
And-
And God help you if you have any other like Dub J's or ZJ's or anything like that.
You know what, and I didn't even give any love to the Grands
yeah.
or to the old school
Full
CJs,
sizes.
the full size and whatnot.
Yeah.
That's even yet a whole other
Onion.
whole other layers
Yeah.
of peeling back that need to be done.
And I'd say that's the JK effect.
Yeah.
It was so easy to minimally lift a JK and put on 35s and like not even break a sweat
and make it work.
and make
like
it
that's the
daily
thing.
drivable.
Daily drive that.
Where you put it on an XJ, you're taking your life into your own hands
You are 8 or 10 inches of lift,
at least.
unless you are just cutting out any of the unibody
Yes.
structure and support.
It's still saying what I said still
It
counts.
still applies. your life and limb.
You're not taking it a couple 100-mile away distance.
You're not driving on your 35s, towing a 72-foot,
now
8,000-pound camper,
with all your dogs and animals and everything else in
right,
it.
with the
Yes.
whole farm packed up going to
Yes.
Iowa with your XJ on 35s.
with no front sway bar.
With no sway bar.
Yes.
Nope. You're doing that on a JT,
Yeah.
not because it's a one-ton vehicle, but because they're just that well built
It's
on
designed
35s.
to do
it's
that.
designed, and
And I
directly.
apologize to those older Jeep diehards. It was just designed better. to do
Without
that.
question. And recently we had to have that conversation about TJs. We had a couple of TJ folks who were like, well, why can't I put it on these 35s on my Jeep? They're on so-and-so's Jeep. They looked, they're in the parking lot here and they can look across and go, well, that one's on 35s. Why can't I have 35s on mine? And I was actually,
We're always like, oh, you definitely can.
you can.
but
It's going to take a whole lot more.
the
It's-
cost is a lot more.
Or that conversation where you get customers come in constantly and say they have a JL or a JK. They go, well, when it's paid off, I'll probably use it off road or I'll put the bigger tires on.
Yeah.
But until then, do you have any old Jeeps I can build? And I'm thinking, it's literally better to build your newer Jeep.
Yeah.
It's less money and it's more robust.
Yeah.
Right? The bad rap that a Dana 30 gets. And while we can build a Dana 30 that is
Yeah.
capable of sustaining 35s and 37s, a JK30 is just a completely different animal
Yeah.
than a TJ, XJ, YJ, ZJ, MJ, WJ, so on and so forth.
All others.
All others.
Dave Ammerman saying, after you look at your 37s for a few months, they look tiny and are ready to go bigger.
Amen to that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Amen to
that
that.
is more the JK effect.
It is. It is. Because now all of a sudden 35s aren't that
And-
special.
Yeah, and 40s aren't that far off.
No.
I'm going to go one step further. You put 35s on your vehicle, then come work here. 35s are tiny.
Yes, and we've had recently we had that customer come in with 30s on his Jeep, and he was like, "I thought these were big tires." I mean,
that was good.
it was super funny because he just was not.
in
He's
the
coming
fold
to us
yet.
because we are Jeep specialists,
well, and
not because he's an off-road enthusiast.
the day he was in, we had 2 Jeeps with 40s on it in the shop. We had a set of 37s right outside the door.
yes,
I mean, it was his tires looked tiny.
yes,
Yes.
yeah, which is funny because at that time, and a shout out to the mothership of the late 2000s. He brought us an LJ. In the late 2000s, they put a 30-9.5-15 Goodyear Wrangler,
I was excited.
and we all thought that was spectacular.
That was such a big tire.
Folks, we were talking about a 30-inch diameter,
Yep.
9.5-inch width on a 15-inch wheel.
Yeah.
And as a community of Jeep owners, our mind was blown.
Yes, and it had a Dana 44 rear.
Yeah, and it had a
We
Dana
didn't know
44.
what to do
And because
with the limited slip.
and at that time you had TJ Rubicons, don't get me wrong, and they had a Goodyear MTR
Yeah,
on it.
31.
And it was a heavy 31, 32, you know what I mean? But this was you could just go to the lot and buy a Jeep with 30s on it. And that was a big deal to us.
Big deal over your 215s.
Yes. Yes. Isn't that funny? So what does it take? And obviously, to use your phrase, the JK effect, right?
Yes.
So maybe we can break down a couple models. And of course, there is fun. You'll see on lots of big social interactions on the interwebs, people will be like, can I fit 35s on my stock Jeep? There will be like a big press conference. You know, the Pope does some declaration, and in the comments, you'll see, I have a stock JK. Can I fit 35s on it? You know,
Yeah.
like, so kudos to you folks who are doing that. Spread the word, you know?
Yep.
But what does it take to put 35s on your on the specific models throughout kind of recent Jeep history?
So a JK 2 inches, 2.5.
Agreed.
Yep. And you can wheel it, drive it, do whatever you want with it, stock flares, and you'd be pretty much fine.
Now, let me put a bit of a caveat to that as a conversation, and this is one that is often looked over, right?
Bump it.
Bump stops.
Yeah.
Okay, folks, I'm saying this as clear as day. Whether you're listening to us, whether you're tuning into the live, bump stops are critical to inhibiting up travel of your suspension, so that the oversized tire does not contact your flare or inner body structure.
Yep.
Right.
Bump stops.
Additionally, making sure you have the proper back spacing.
Oh,
That too.
without question. So those little fine tuning pieces are not always accommodated for in lift kits
Yep.
or your economy budget boosts.
And there's always little things like the front valance or air dam or whatever you want to call it that is going to get in the way, that needs trimmed or taken off.
Mm-hmm.
There's tons of little detail stuff. And if you call into us or text us or email us, we can go into great depth of all the little
And have that
things.
conversation, no doubt.
But for this, we're going to be kind of just this is a meat and potatoes, kind of what you need to do.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
and I'm gonna build off your JK statement and say that one of the cool things about the JK specifically, what we saw in the industry with the JK, was that we could just go to a stubby bumper.
Yep.
So take the valance or the air dam off.
Yep.
Go to a narrower bumper and high clearance flares.
Yeah.
And high clearance flares for TJs and older vehicles were arduous to put on. They were
Yes.
hours of installation. If we
Yeah.
were to quote
JK,
you,
grab it and rip it.
correct. If we were to quote you a high clearance fender or flare on an XJ or a TJ, it's going to be 2 or 3 times longer labor hours
And
to
the metal
install.
saw comes out.
And the metal saw, we're going to cut your body.
Yep.
Whereas on a JK, you unbolt them and you bolt them back on.
Yeah.
So labor is half as much at minimum.
Yep.
And you can just run a set of high clearance flares with appropriate bumper,
Mm-hmm.
and you can put 35s on that Jeep.
Yep.
And that's the most spectacular thing that we did not ever have with the older models.
Yep. 100%. And with the JL, it's even easier.
With JL, you can buy it with 35s now.
Yep. Stock.
Yep.
Let
So
that sink in.
that's again, and arguably for utilization, people are saying about an inch and a half
Yeah.
is the bare minimum needed. But
Yep.
again, bump stops are critical because
Yeah.
we're going to touch body parts.
Yep.
So
And
JLs,
if you haven't, you just haven't wheeled hard enough yet.
well, and that's the thing, right? Or the right apron in and out of the bank.
Well, speaking of two, we're going to go to the comments again. Joe is saying Jeep Jamboree USA recently changed their requirements for the Rubicon Jamboree. 37s are now the minimum tire size.
Huh.
That's new
Wow.
information to me.
Now, real quick, I'm going to sidetrack. There was, and it wasn't the Rubicon Jamboree specifically, but there was a push and Joe may or may not be able to weigh in on this, or any of our other JJ USA followers, but prior to 15, it was somewhere in there, we were setting up a number of our customers to go and enjoy themselves at Jeep Jamboree USA. And actually, there was quite a few trails that would not allow you on them if you had anything bigger than a 35. The max tire that you were allowed to go to these jamborees with was a 35, because we actually had a couple customers in the early years want 37s. We were capable of giving them a 37-inch tire equipped Jeep, but they wanted to participate in JJ USA, and there was a number of trail guidelines that said you can't have that big of a tire.
Yeah.
And so we were actually kind of detuning the Jeeps
For the rules.
for the rules.
Yep.
Fascinating enough. And now, roughly 7-8 years later, we're actually seeing them mandating that tire size.
Isn't that funny how that works?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then Chuck was saying, I went to Holly Oaks with OEM 33s on my Jeep. Felt so inadequate.
But you had the best, most capable vehicle up to that point.
Yeah.
Let that sink in.
I went to Southington on stock with a Gladiator, and the tires did great until the end when I was leaving on the main road out of there and blew a tire.
Sliced the wall on
Sliced
it.
the inside wall of it. I was like, are you
Yes.
kidding me?
And I think that just because we shout it from the rooftops, and so it's always worth mentioning, it is always our recommendation that you take your Jeep bone stock and
Yeah.
go play with it.
Yeah.
And however you intend to use your Jeep, use it in its bone stock configuration first,
Yep.
and then we're happy to build the heck out of it. We talked a little bit about it on the American Hustle today, that oftentimes we refuse people's money until they can tell us how they're going to use their Jeep.
Right.
Until you can say, these are the expectations I have. I really don't want to start building your Jeep because
we hate to see people spend money 3 or 4 times.
exactly.
If you're relifting your Jeep, there's some choices made. that
Yes,
weren't
and
good.
oftentimes we see customers come to us because they've gone elsewhere. They got something installed. They
Yeah.
went out and they actually started using it,
and it wasn't what they wanted.
and it wasn't what they wanted.
Yep.
So
And we've unlifted Jeeps.
we have absolutely unlifted Jeeps.
Now, Joe said currently it's 40s without prior notice. Trail crew excluded.
Interesting.
Crazy.
Yep.
Interesting. So no 40s for JJ USA at this time, but at one point it was 37s. Interesting.
That's interesting. But it says without prior notice, so you could actually, if you make arrangements ahead of time.
potentially get a
Potentially.
conditional.
Yep.
Because what they don't want, oftentimes if folks are not aware, and this big tire conversation is about sustainability of our trail systems. And oftentimes Jeep Jamboree USA is accessing trails that are not typically open to the public, or they are conditional and permitted access. So certainly as we go west, they're utilizing public and private lands that need specialized logistics. And it's valuable to us as an industry so that we can continue to go out and explore this beautiful God-given country, that we use it responsibly. And when you have some yahoo out there, much as we did here locally years ago on those groundhog 44-inch boggers,
Yep.
and their blown big truck, and they're just out there whomping away, digging out the ruts in the trails, that doesn't leave it a better place for us all to enjoy.
Yeah.
Well, and because he said trail crew excluded, does that mean that we're putting their 4xe on 40s?
Oh,
I think we are. And
Heyo.
then Linda said 100% wheel stock first. I know exactly what I want now.
Nice.
So 40s.
40s.
Darla did say, I think if we end up going bigger on Harley's tires, I would need 2 steps to get in it. LOL.
Yeah, that is always a
That
thing.
is a challenge.
And then Joe saying we took the stock 4xe Rubicon to the Arch Canyon, JJ, and it was helpful because we showed what you could do with a stock Jeep.
Amen to that.
And now we can put it on 40s.
Very, very capable vehicles.
And that's the thing. I mean, we love building them, but we want that value-add experience that you have to understand what your intention and your purpose is with these bigger tires.
Linda's saying 37s. We got to do some more convincing.
So let's move on to the next platform. What are you thinking?
Let's put it in perspective.
Okay.
Just because it's something I did personally, XJs, old body XJs, and are actually easier than new bodies because they are smaller wheel wells.
Okay.
But I will say 7.5 to 10 with cutting to put 35s on an XJ. Put that in perspective. So your
I agree.
steering is gone. You have to do full custom steering. Your factory axles need to be upgraded at that point, and minimum geared and beefed up. You're cutting the body away
Yes.
to the limit of its ability without welding stuff back together,
Yes.
and you're bumping it, and you're probably still trying to rip your front fenders off when you wheel it. Ask me how I know.
And
Bumpers, all that have to happen.
all of that have to happen on an XJ just to
Yes.
get it to the same point that JT or JL you can
Yes.
immediately just stuff
With
a
an inch.
37 with an inch and a half, 2 inches.
Yeah.
You know? And the thing about XJ, so as XJ owners, and you had a Grand, but you never really lifted it, right, Jeffrey?
I didn't lift
okay.
it. No, I just wheeled it.
So as prior
Inappropriately.
XJ, no doubt, that's okay. As prior XJ, proud XJ owners,
Mhm.
how much lift and what were your specs at your final XJ?
So I was actually adding that up in my head. I had, I think it started out as a 5.5 long arm lift. Then I threw a puck on top of that, so that's another 2 to 3 inches minimum. Plus, I had the shackles as high as they would go. So I was solidly in the 8 to 9 inch range.
And you did what for steering? Because we haven't even talked about that.
So I did WJ knuckle swap,
Mhm.
full custom DOM tubing for steering, did a box brace, had a new steering box because the old one was just tired. Trying to think what else. The front axle was trussed. It was geared. It had a locker in it.
And you had high clearance flares at the end.
And I built it for 33s, and then I put 35s on it, and I had to put high clearance flares on it, and had to cut the Jeep a lot.
Yes. So my XJ,
Looked cool though.
yours did
I'm
look
sure it
cool.
did.
Yeah. My XJ was at its pinnacle. It was 10 inches of lift. It was 8 inches in a Skyjacker lift kit with a 2-inch puck,
Yep.
which makes us a true full 10 inches of lift.
Yep.
That was 35s.
Yep.
And I had an Olympic bumper, so you had the whole front valance was trimmed
Gone.
up, was gone for that. And I had stock steering. So, folks, I mean,
So bad.
let that sink in just a little bit. The fact that
And that was primarily a street Jeep. You didn't even wheel it that much.
that was a camping. That was
Yeah, it was,
expensive camping before overlanding was cool.
Correct.
And
But you weren't going like SOR or Jeep school and beating the
no,
crap
I
out
didn't
of
do it. I did hit a number of good trails. It wasn't until the 97, the
Yeah.
XJ 97 is when I really started to wheel, and that was on 31s if I recall.
Yeah.
The big XJ was more camping, wilderness exploration, that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. And that 10 inches of lift, if you think about it, folks, that's a geometry of steering. So
Yeah.
the fact that
We're
you're
10 inches out of
you're
what it's
10
supposed to be.
inches out of what that steering is supposed to be.
Yeah.
And I feel like I did something Skyjacker related for steering at that time, but it's not the steering we have now.
Right.
And so it's valuable to put in comparison that my wife's JL is on 2.5 inches with 37s.
Yep.
And a stubby bumper, and it can do anything
And
you
you've
could
driven
possibly.
it states away.
Many states. We can
Where
just
I used to take my 35 XJ that was very well put together and drive it to East Lake and wanted to get out. And I got there.
wanted to be done with this drive. I want to be done. So now let's talk about a TJ. What does a TJ look like?
TJ, I feel you're in the 4.5 to 5.
Absolutely.
range.
I agree entirely with you.
Yep. And you might have to cut and bash things.
You still have to cut and bash or
Yep.
add a high clearance flare, and your steering is still not what the JK and JL is because
Yes.
it's just narrower. So
Yeah.
your lever of space that you have to work with is narrower. The actual leverage from the steering geometry. So when we go to a JK, they go to what's called crossover steering.
Yep.
And the value of crossover steering, folks, is
Huge.
the pivot point goes all the way out to the knuckle
Yep.
at the wheel itself specifically. Whereas in our older model Jeeps, our pivot point for our steering is actually kind of midway, about 3/4 across
Yep.
the tie rod assembly.
Yep.
in this kind of funky inverted Y assembly. And so that starts to turn more vertical, and it gives you a slower and less responsivity out of your steering.
And the higher your angle is, the more bumps and stuff affect your steering, and
the more bumps
and
bump steer becomes atrocious at that point. It becomes absolutely atrocious. On that XJ, I know that I had Rusty's drop track bar, and I had to run a astronomical drop pitman arm,
biggest one I've ever seen,
the biggest one you've ever seen, as is my life. That's how I work. To try and get that parallel geometry between track bar and drag
box and mount on the frame, because you're getting all that leverage to it.
That added leverage to it, right? And so this is so important. If you are not within our local facility or the geography to come to us, and you are looking at a lift kit for your JK or JL right now, and the shop you're going to suggests a drop pitman arm,
stop
on a JK or a JL or a JT,
don't go there.
Do not go to them. If you take nothing from this conversation, your JK or JL or JT never should have a drop pitman arm on it. Until you get to 6-8 inches on a JK or a JL, which is almost absolutely obscene and unheard of. No engineered kit should have a drop pitman arm. Are there kits out there? Yes, there are. And you don't want them on your Jeep or for a company to install them that way.
We've taken so many of those off.
Yes.
It's kind of sad.
Because that JK, JL, JT does not need that geometry correction.
And honestly, the days are gone where you look at a Jeep, last 2 models, and they're like, oh, it's 7 inches in the air, and people are like, cool. I see that, and I'm like, why? Yep, because I got 3.5 inches on my JK with fender flares, and I'm on 37s. I don't know why you need to go really much bigger than that. 4.5 is probably max, in my opinion, personal opinion.
On a JL, JT is what you're saying?
Or JK.
Oh, okay. So I see the merit in 6-inch lift kits at this point. If you are that consumer who desires tons and 40s, there is value in a 6-inch lift kit. But with that said, you are going to a caster corrected front axle. And at that point in time, that is the only permissible manner in which you can go to 6 inches of lift.
And then the crazy part is you have to almost start the measurements and say, compare my Jeep on 44s, 37s, and what my pumpkin to ground is. And what it is on 40s and tons. Because I bet you they're about the same.
They're very similar.
So your actual clearance over an obstacle is about the same.
It is very similar. But that's not what we're talking about today. We're at that what does it take to put 35? So I think we can confidently and succinctly say or share that that XJs.
This is just clicked in my brain, and you'll love this. Remember JP had a diagram, and it was like it just showed the models of the vehicle, and it showed the tires and how they classified it going across.
No, I don't.
I remember it plain as day. I might even still have the magazines because we're hoarders.
Absolutely.
But it had TJ, and it was well before JKs came out, but it would tell you what you need to do for what size tire. And I had like a skull and crossbones for like really big tires.
Nice.
For extreme ones, because honestly, to put 35s like on a ZJ or a full size Wagoneer, you're well past.
We should make one of those charts for.
We should make one of those charts, and that would be kind of fun. That would be interesting. We could get Davey on the graphics.
Absolutely.
And, that would be a good. We have to let people, let us know in the comments and on the YouTube if they think that would be a valuable resource. Shirt. We could be a cool shirt.
That'd be a really
could be a cool shirt.
Yeah.
We could be, popping out those shirts, and that would be really interesting. I dig that idea.
Yeah.
But because as you mentioned, to put 35s on any of those older models, the wheel well openings just aren't there.
No.
And if you get into
really cutting the body at that point.
And if you get into the CJs from 7s, 5s, and earlier, some of the actual running gear components are just you know,
You're not
35s, you're not
No.
gonna cut it.
Nope.
Um,
Which is why traditionally you'll see our CJ builds are on 33s or below.
yeah. Hey, there's actually a consumer experience where they just look right
Yes.
on 33s.
Yes.
Yep.
And that's what's interesting because of iconic imagery.
Mhm.
33s is what a CJ looks good on.
And really, in the 35s and above, they're in a buggy territory almost. With a
No, no
CJ.
doubt with a CJ.
Yep.
But I think it's funny because when we look at a JT or a JL or a JK, if it's not on 35s,
Pick on Jeff constantly because his tires look so small.
I agree. So Lee said, "I want the skull and crossbone package, please."
I love it. I think on that note, we know the good, the bad, and the ugly of the 35s on at least our more modern application Jeep branded models. We're going to take a brief moment, transition, and we'll be right back with hashtag not sponsored. We'll be talking about an event.
And now it's time for our product spotlight.
Hashtag not sponsored.
Spotlight.
Hashtag not sponsored.
So we're going to be talking about a date coming up, and
May
what-
20th.
What I am really like on pins and needles about is it going to be 80 or 40 degrees? How
What,
hardcore?
last year wasn't it like 36 degrees or
I was
something?
terrible.
It was, yeah.
And
and
I
misty.
am so soft that I have not been able to take part in most topless days, unless taking the Freedom panels out and driving from here to home counts.
Oh no,
I think
no,
that
no,
can
no.
count. That can count.
I
we just
think
hired Jeff up.
I think if you're going to participate, you go all out. Doesn't matter the
He's
weather.
counting doors. Too.
Doors off, top off.
Uh-huh.
Let's just do it.
Let's do it.
Jeff's crazy.
So
That's probably true.
and the thing is, there was a time in my life, and I would take the top and doors off the YJ. Remember
Yes.
Baby Jeep?
Yep.
Baby Jeep's tops and doors came off March 1st, and they didn't go back on until November 1st.
And I remember many a time where you were freezing to death.
Freezing to death.
That's part of
right?
the experience.
It is part of the experience.
This-
I felt I was hardcore. I wore a mask. I
You
had a
did.
beanie. I had my
You had the
thing.
flipper.
I
hat,
actually worked in Edinburgh. I was living in Meadville. I drove the highway. It
cleared
We
snow off
we
the seats.
actually have
cleared snow.
we have Jeep blankets for the kids, so that if
Well,
we
yeah.
get stuck out in that,
so
So we're so soft currently this year. Amy's hardtop's still on.
I have heard from multiple people, and I love it when they say, "Well, I saw Scott's Jeep running around." I said, "No, that's Amy's Jeep."
Yes.
And
It's a
yes,
full
the
winter
hard top.
mode.
They were like, "Is her soft top or is her hard top still on?" I said, "Oh yeah, it is." You know? So we are talking about Go Topless Day. We don't mean the women's rights movement, though. If you wanted to combine the two, I don't think too
I'm
many
not gonna
people are
judge
going to
you.
argue
I was
with
going
you.
to say there's a whole thing on Facebook for that.
Oh,
Go for
okay.
it. Yep.
That's a possibility. Go Topless Day does. I have to tell people, if you are unaware, it is inherently intertwined with extreme terrain. So the good, the bad, and the ugly of the big box retailer. You'll see that it is. They do a very good job. It's my opinion, smoke and mirrors.
Mhm.
But they say that Barricade hosts it. Barricade is their house brand. So. The problem I have is that Barricade, I don't really have any problem saying this, is not a quality
No.
bumper manufacturer.
So bad.
I don't have any problem saying that
we don't
because
install that.
we won't install it. As far as supporting the Jeep community and offering resources to clubs and organizations who want to positively participate, cool. I appreciate that. And
Yeah.
that's okay. And that to me is different than, manufacturing a bumper.
Yes.
But as far as a Go Topless Day, it is this weekend, I think
Yep.
May 20th. I know that there are a number of local activities for people to get involved with.
Mhm.
Barricade via Extreme Terrain pumps a lot of money into clubs and organizations who have appropriately registered. And I say that specifically because if you have not registered appropriately and already received your confirmation information, I have heard people who have not gotten the money out of
Yeah.
it that they said they were going to.
Right.
Yeah, probably
So-
pretty close to not being able to do that at this point.
I think they are pretty close. I think a lot of those packets have already been sent out. But you are hosting, an event, a rally, a off-road run, a meet and greet, whatever it might be. So you may want to just get into the Book of Faces or whatever your social media poison of choice is and type in Jeep Go Topless Day. I would not recommend just Go Topless Day.
Especially if you're at work.
Especially if you're at work, not suitable for work. and just see if there are events happening local to you. If you're not already involved in a Jeep club, this might be an opportunity to get linked up with somebody who is hosting a Go Topless Day activity, ride, or meet and greet. And that is this Saturday. So you've only got a few days to plan for that.
Yeah, but there's postings everywhere for it. So many local clubs in every area is doing it.
Yes. And I think that no matter what, that it brings positive exposure to our brand, to our community, and we appreciate everybody who's going to be participating
It's a way to
in
have
that.
fun.
It is a way to have fun. As a northerner,
Yes.
I always have to say it's funny that some of these companies, these manufacturers, set these outdoor experiences at times when we are still fighting with the elements.
Yes.
I recognize in the South this is probably perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect
Yeah.
weather. It's not
But
actually.
Scott could do it.
Yeah, Scott could do it.
It's not 120 degrees yet. It's
Yeah, that's
Yes.
right. The
It's
Jeeps aren't
perfect for
all
them.
going to overheat. The clutches aren't going to burn up.
right.
Yes.
Parading around and doing that kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
for us Northerners, it's a little hit and miss sometimes.
And we've had a good weather year so far, and it's really still hit and miss if we're going to have good weather or not.
Yes.
Yep.
Right now, I think the 10-day forecast, if we can trust that at all,
No.
does
Not on the Great
does-
Lakes.
does appear to be above average for participation. So if you are within our immediate proximity, we encourage you to link up with one of the local clubs who is hosting an event. Get involved, do some fun stuff with your Jeep, and enjoy your day.
I heard your Jeep's going to be out at one of them.
I hope that is the case, and we'll confirm that going forward. Absolutely.
Yep.
Anything else for the good of the order? All right.
Oh, yeah. Since we were talking about the Go Topless Day, we actually have a new commercial. If you liked our stiff door syndrome commercial, there is a new one that's getting released. If you are a listener, we're going to insert that here, but I'm not going to play it right now on the live unless you guys want me to pull it up on the phone.
No. We're gonna let it go out to our podcast listeners first and our Patreons.
Yep.
We appreciate all of the support that those people. We appreciate everybody who's part of this process, but we want to give them that little extra value added experience.
Yep.
And I will tease because obviously we want to sell the product. It is about the mirrors for
Yes.
when your doors are off, because before Saturday comes around and you're trying to take your doors off for the first time, there's two products that we critically carry. It is the door pin and hinge inserts, and then the mirrors, and those are valuable pieces for when you do get to go topless.
Yes.
And I mean that in the most innocent way possible.
Until you hear the commercial.
Gives you something to look forward to, folks. We hope you have a blessed and safe week. Enjoy Go Topless Day if you're planning to participate. If you're not, tool around on YouTube, find some of our cool videos. We've been working with Savage to release a all new Tech Tuesday inspired vlog, and so we'll be kind of showing you some of the inner workings, the good, the bad, and the ugly of behind the scenes with SFJ 4x4. And as always, we appreciate your presence here on the live, in your ear holes, and on the old YouTube. Until then, Jeep family, Jeep on.
Jeep on.
Jeep on.